Good evening, everyone. I am Shootin' Triple here in Second Life. Thank you for tuning in. This is When I Was Your Age, podcast where I will be talking about what stuff today was like when I was your age. If you'd like me to cover anything, please, by all means, feel free to drop me an email message. I'll be happy to see what I can do about that. You've got it right here on the screen, shootintribble@gmail.com, and just, you can write in the subject line, When I Was Your Age. There are a couple of things that I've been thinking about doing over the last couple of weeks since I've been gone, and I apologize for not having kept up on it. But with the changeover with the computer and a couple of trips that I had to do, things were a little on the weird side. So I finally decided to cover something that was not exactly totally covered one of the earlier times. But you might remember that I talked about audio editing a little while ago. And I decided that I was going to go ahead and cover something that I've suddenly realized is very odd for me now. Yes, by the way, I'm drinking coffee out of my Betty Boop mug because I love Betty Boop. She's one of the few women I would have left my wife for, but we'll talk about that later. When I talked about audio editing, I talked about using cassette tapes or, audio tape, because that's what was available at the time. But I'm starting to come across a situation now where I finally realized I actually have technology that is actually fading away to where it's no longer viable anymore. And I'm going to talk about that in another show. Let me explain to you what it is that is kind of interesting to me. I have in my hands right now, even though you guys over in Second Life can't see this. On YouTube, of course, you can see it. Sorry. I have in my hands one of my absolute favorite of all albums. This is a record. This is a vinyl 12-inch record. It's not what you think. Anyway, this is from the RCA Victor Company. The serial number on it is, or the model number, whatever it is 20-1753-A Alpha. This one is In the Mood, Glenn Miller and his orchestra. And on the back side of this is Sunrise Serenade, also Glenn Miller. Now, what's special about this particular record is that this is about twice as big, twice as heavy as a regular record that you would normally get, like in a sleeve in a record store anymore. This one, however, is kind of special. Mostly because this is not the kind of record that you would be expecting. Normally, a record this size, you'd expect to be using it at 33 and a third revolutions per minute, 33 and a third, 33 RPM. No. This one is one of the early ones. This is not 45 either. This is 78. This is early. And this entire record that you see here at 78 RPM holds only one song. The same way that you would have a 45 single later, that's what this was. You didn't have 33 and a third, and you didn't have like 7 songs on the side. This is, maybe 7 minutes worth of time, maybe, tops. Now, granted, I don't have a record cylinder to show off to you guys, but this is close enough. Albums like this, records like this, are exceedingly hard to find these days, although vinyl does seem to be making a comeback. The turntables are prohibitively expensive, $200 plus in some cases, never mind having to replace the stylus. But that's a whole other issue. Now, one of the albums that I got from my parents when I moved was this one here, which is Bill Cosby. This is going back to 67, 69. And it's called I Started Out as a Child. And this is one of his earlier recordings, his stand-up, way back when. And this is great. This was a great album. And as a child, I loved listening to this over and over and over again. It was fun. And the album cover, as you can see, has got a lot of stuff to it. The image quality, of course, on the photos on it are not really great, but considering we're talking about, the late 60s, overall, not bad. However, albums like this were a little fragile, as you can well imagine. And some people wanted to be able to play the albums wherever they were, portably. Now, there were some turntables that you could take with you that had, that were portable, had their own little speakers, or maybe even you were lucky enough and you had one that had a whole bunch of batteries in it, 90-volt batteries. And yes, I'm not kidding, 90 volts in some cases for radios way back when. I'm sorry, I had a whole bunch of stuff that I put down because I didn't want to, make it all over the place. This that I'm holding in my hand right now is a battery pack from a laptop that's no longer functional. Now, I know this doesn't have anything to do with this, but this is the best I had for the time being. The size and shape of this particular battery pack is not too different from an 8-track tape. Now, some of you will recognize this. An 8-track tape was a cartridge that had a magnetic tape, not too very different from a cassette tape, just a lot wider, and it spooled inside and wound around in an infinite loop so that you put it into, well, for instance, I used to have one that it was in my car when I was a kid. High school. And you'd put it into the tape deck and it would start to play. And depending as to where you were on the tape, if you didn't like whatever it was that was playing at the moment, you could select one of the other tracks. And there were 4 tracks to choose from. And at any one point, a different song would be playing at different points, because even though it was all in the same section of the magnetic tape, you had 4 different sections, and it would read from any one of those 4. Now then, why is it called an 8-track tape? Well, it's because each of those 4 tracks was broken up into 2 tracks each, left channel and right channel. So you could take it on the go, and if you were in your car, of course, having a turntable in your car doesn't really work. So you take one of these, put it in. Now, of course, as we know full well, the 8-track tape was, it was kind of big, it was kind of bulky, and it was prone to coming apart. The tape would get stuck inside of the mechanism. And since it was this big, somebody came along and said, well, why can't we make one smaller? Along comes the audio cassette. 45 minutes on a side, half an hour on a side, and you could just use this instead. It's smaller, more convenient, and you could fast forward it through a lot easier and go back and forth. And recording on these was far easier, of course. There were 8-track recorders out there, but it was really difficult to find those. My 6th grade teacher, believe it or not, had one. I don't remember what it was that he did with it. He did some lessons on it, if I remember correctly. But beyond that, that was about it. But again, audio cassettes. And those came along. But of course, audio cassette is prone to, like any other analog system like this, it's prone to hiss. And if you've listened to anything on an audio cassette, of course, you've heard that before. Along comes 1980, and Sony produces the audio CD. An hour's worth of digital information encoded in such a fashion that, as they used to say, you could hear the squeak of Ringo's drums when he stepped on the drum pedal. Now, was it really that good? I don't know. However, it did have one of the better parts of you could move to any track that you wanted. You could fast forward far easier. And theoretically, you wouldn't ever have to worry about the medium being destroyed by the player because it gets read by a laser. So it's not ever physically being touched. Now, of course, the platter itself may eventually oxidize or break down or be rubbed clean, or whatever the case may be. But theoretically, it'll last a good long time. Now, yes, I know, they break down after a while, but that's simply inherent in the materials, not with the actual data. That's not where the problem is. And then someone decided, you know what? If we pack the information different, if we encode it differently, we can put new information, we can put more information, we can put, we can put movies. We can use the same technology, we can use the same size, we can use similar platters. But so long as we encode smaller packets of information, we can pack in more. We can double the density, triple. And in this case, as you guys in Second Life can't really see, the album that I had before was I Started Out as a Child from Bill Cosby. And the CD that I had gotten out was my copy of I Started Out as a Child. Same one. But when I finally got my home stereo system, this was the first DVD that I bought to really test it out. And this is the DVD of Queen live at Wembley Stadium, which was an amazing concert. Truly, truly amazing. Do you need to be a Queen fan in order to love this concert? Maybe you do. But the idea that there were thousands upon thousands of people hanging on every note is a wonderful thing. It's something almost any performer would love to add to their resume. But bottom line, this is simply building on the same technology as what we've had. It's still a bunch of data encoded into a platter that's read back for you to enjoy. Of course, with the original records, it was a physical groove read with a stylus and pumped back through a system whereby it actually amplifies the signal and spits you back out the audio. And of course, there were serious fidelity problems with those because you've got hiss, crackle, and pop. Sometimes the motor would not always be turning at an even keel, so you'd have wow and flutter. And then you come up to this. A DVD, an optical disc, with hours upon hours of wonderful quality audio and video and a memory that will last who only knows how long. I happen to love what Freddie Mercury was able to do. He was an amazing performer. But even now, even DVD is not the end-all be-all. It's been surpassed, in many cases, by Blu-ray and high-def DVD. Not that anybody uses high-def anymore. It's Blu-ray. And even that is giving way to new stuff, new encoding, new source material that is using all digital technology. Movies have traditionally been 24 frames a second, and The Hobbit was filmed in 48, if I remember correctly, using all digital equipment. So the audio is digital, the video is digital, twice the speed, CGI encoding of different scenes and characters, and all with the same idea as what started it. A moving stream of data being encoded into a medium and then read back. Now, of course, the records themselves go back even to an earlier idea of the telegraph, because they had the ticker tapes. You might remember seeing some of them on The Addams Family. Gomez would go over to this little glass enclosed item and pulling out this thing and looking at it all, and stuff was written down on it. And it was possible via Morse code to send information that way. So it would punch out sections of the tape to give you the dots and dashes so you could read back. Was it the most efficient method? No. But it was good enough for the time. So now the question becomes, where does this take us? What's the next big thing? As we know full well from MIB, Kay was all upset because he was going to have to buy the White Album all over again with this little tiny disc. Where is it going to take us next? I have no idea. All I know is I love the ride. Who knows? Maybe you're going to invent whatever the next big thing is. Maybe not. But at the very least, I hope that you enjoy trying to remember or appreciating how this technology has come around. And what was the technology that I've finally decided is just going away? You're going to have to wait for that one. But I promise, I'll get to it. In the meantime, as always, thank you very much for paying attention. If you've liked what I'm doing, please, by all means, over here on YouTube, you can give me a like, give me a subscribe, perhaps. Spread the word. If nothing else, who knows? Maybe somebody will like what I'm doing. I'd appreciate it. And don't worry about trying to send me any money for anything. Don't worry about that. I do this because I enjoy it. I've still got other items that I'm planning on covering, not the least of which is the MIDI music revolution. I've got suggestions on doing something about CGI versus practical filmmaking. And of course, I've got this technology thing that I'm going to cover yet. Don't worry. I'll get to it. In the meantime, of course, as always, please send me your messages, shujintriple@gmail.com. And as always, I wish you the peace I no longer have. I wish you the strength that I've learned. I wish you all well. Until next time, good night.
You know what's true? Before you can say boo, you'll be my age too.